Kunja Vihari. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Vihari. Jai Gopi Janna Vallabha Girivardhari. Jai Gopi Janna Vallabha Girivardhari. Yasodanandana Brajajana Ranjana. Yasodanandana Brajajana Ranjana. Yamuna Tiravanachari. Yamuna Tiravanachari. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Vihari. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Vihari. Jaya Gopi Janna Vallabha Girivardhari. Jaya Gopi Janna Vallabha Girivardhari. Yasodanandana Brajajana Ranjana. Yasodanandana Brajajana Ranjana. Yamuna Tiravanachari. Yamuna Tiravanachari. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Vihari. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Vihari. Jayam Vishnupad Paramahansa Pariraja Kacharya Ashto Charu Srimad His Divine Grace A.C. Bhakti Vedanta Swami Prabhupada Ki Jai. Ananta Kota Vaishnav Vrinda Ki Jai. Namacharya Srila Haridas Thakur Ki Jai. Vimsakaho Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadha Shivasari Gaura Bhaktarinda. Grantaraj Srimad Bhagavatam Ki Jai. Nitai Gaura Premanand. All glories to the Samagurus. All glories to the Samagurus. All glories to the Samagurus. All glories. All glories. You know what? Yeah, very short. This is Bhagavat Shrayas.
Hare Krishna, everyone. So in front we have Bhagavat Asrya Prabhu, His Grace Bhagavat Asrya Prabhu. Bhagavat Asrya Prabhu ki Bhagavat Ashrya Prabhu joined Iskcon in 1974 in Melbourne, Australia. And he's initiated by Srila Prabhupada in Vrindavan in 1975. He served as temple president in Soho, London, for several years, and he's been preaching across 4 continents and making outreach programs. And he's particularly inclined to focus on inspiring devotees to build strong relationships and their personal approach to seva, sadhana, and sangha. He's very dear to his godbrother, our spiritual master, Bhakti Charu Swami Maharaj, Guru Maharaj. And when Guru Maharaj was in Australia doing retreats, Prabhu was asked to co-deliver the retreat. So him and Guru Maharaj worked very closely together. Every day, he's running evening classes in the Nityananda Bhavan, 304. So please all feel free to take his guidance and association. And hopefully he'll be here till Christmas Eve, the day before Christmas. We pray that we don't lose out this opportunity to take his association. He gave a class yesterday, Brahmachari class, and I personally felt so many of my doubts were destroyed. So we thank Prabhu for visiting Iskcon Ujjain, and hopefully he comes every year. This is the start of a new tradition for Prabhu. Thank you. Bhagavat Ashrya Prabhu ki. His Grace Bhagavat Ashrya Prabhu ki.
Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 9, Chapter 16. Lord Parashuram destroys the ruling class. Text number 30 and 31. 30 has no purport. Putram kritva sunasepam devaratam chabhagavam ajigatam sutannaha jeshta esha prakalpyatam. When Vishwamitra accepted the son of Ajigata, known as Shunashepa, who was born in the Brigal dynasty and was also known as Devarata, as one of his own sons. Vishwamitra ordered his other sons to accept Sunasepa as their eldest brother. Text 31. Is it up here somewhere? Is the verse? Sorry? After me, okay. All right, text 31. Yo vai Harishchandra Makhe. Yo vai Harishchandra Makhe. Vikrita Purusha Pashahu. Vikrita Purusha Pashahu. Stutva Devan Prajeshadin. Stutva Devan Prajeshadin. Mumuche Pashabandhanat. Mumuche Pashabandhanat. Yo vai Harishchandra Makhe. Vikrita Purusha Pashahu. Stutva Devan Prajeshadin. Mumuche Pashabandhanat. Yo vai Harishchandra Makhe Vikrita Purusha Pashahu Stutva Devan Prajeshadin Mumuche Pasha Bandhanat. Ladies. Ya he who Sunashepa Vai indeed Harishchandra Make in the sacrifice performed by King Harishchandra. Vikritaha was sold. Purusha, man. Pashu, sacrificial animal. Stutva, offering prayers. Devan, to the demigods. Praja Isha Adin, headed by Lord Brahma. Mumuche was released. Pasha Bandhanat, from being bound with ropes like an animal. Translation. Shunashepa's father sold Sunashepa to be sacrificed as a man animal in the yajna of King Harishchandra. When Shunashepa was brought into the sacrificial arena, he prayed to the demigods for release and was released by their mercy. Purport by Srila Prabhupada. Here is a description of Shunashepa. When Harishchandra was to sacrifice his son Rohita, Rohita arranged to save his own life by purchasing Shunashepa from Shunashepa's father to be sacrificed in the yajna. Shunashepa was sold to Maharaja Harishchandra because he was the middle son between the oldest and the youngest. It appears that the sacrifice of a man as an animal in yajna has been practiced for a very long time. Om Agnati Mirandasya Kiranjana Shalakaya Chakshurudmilitam Jena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Shri Chaitanya Manobhishtam Stapitam Jena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamayam Dadati Swapadantikam Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Juta Padakamalam Shri Gurun Vaishnavam Scha Shri Rupam Sagrajatam Sahagana Raganutan Vitantam Sajivam Sadvaitam Savadhutam Parijana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Deva Shri Radha Krishna Padan Sahagana Lalita Shri Vishakan Vitangscha Hey Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dinabando Jagatpate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostute Tapta Kanchana Gourangi Radhe Brindavaneshwari Rishabhanu Sute Devi Pranamami Hari Pre Vanchakopa Trubhyascha Kripasindo Vayevacha Patitanam Bhavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shri Vasadi Gaura Bhaktarinda Ki Jai Shri Shri Radha Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Namo Vishnu Padaya, Krishna Prashtaya Bhutale, Srimate Bhakti Vedanta Swami Niti Namine. Namaste Saraswati Deve Gauravani Pracharine, Nevishesha Sunyavadi Paschacha Deshatarine. Ukam Karoti Vachalam, Pangum Banga Yate Girim, Yatkripa Tamaham Vande, Shri Gurun Dinatarana. Yo vai Harishchandra Makhe Vikrita Purusha Pashahu Stutva Devan Prajeshadin Mumuche Pashapandanat. Shunashepa's father sold Shunashepa to be sacrificed as a man animal in the yajna of King Harishchandra. When Shunashepa was brought into the sacrificial arena, he prayed to the demigods for release and was released by their mercy. This is a very clear example of the admonition of the Bhagavatam that there's danger at every step in the material world. Actually, this is describing a very ruthless situation. No mercy here. And the preparedness to actually sacrifice another human being for your own advancement in some material situation is actually very indicative of what it is like to be living in the material world. However, there must be sacrifice for whatever purpose you want to achieve in life. In the 18th chapter of the Bhagavad Gita, Krishna tells Arjuna 3 things should never be given up: austerity, charity, and sacrifice. There must be sacrifice for whatever goal you want to achieve in life, whether it be material or spiritual. There has to be the practice of some sacrifice. So, there's arrangement for performing a sacrifice in Vedic culture. There's an arrangement for performing particular sacrifices for anything you want. in the beginning of the Bhagavatam, we have this beautiful verse: Nigama kalpataro galakam phalam sukha mukad amrita daravasam pivita bhagavatam rasayam mahoraho rasika bhuvi bhavukaha. That says that this Srimad Bhagavatam is the mature fruit of the desire tree of Vedic literatures. All desires, all desires are facilitated. No matter what you want, there's a way of getting it. But there has to come a time in our lives where we reach a situation where we become fed up with pursuing material desire. That may take a very, very long time to come to. In many places, Srila Prabhupada uses the term, we have been in this material world pursuing material desire since time immemorial. And that's an inconceivable situation, how long we've been in the material world pursuing material desire, either by legitimate means or by illegitimate means. And there must come a time when you become fed up with pursuing material desire and undergoing whatever sacrifices and austerities you have to undergo in order to achieve those things. Because there is actually nothing to be gained here. Nothing at all. There was I saw a documentary some years ago about a rock and roll band, actually, that became very, very famous, and but their lead singer had a very tragic life and died untimely. And they had a song called "It's a Long Way to the Top If You Want to Rock and Roll." And in the documentary, there was an interview with a person who had known this singer from very early in his life, before he became famous, and knew what he'd gone through to get to the top in this world of rock and roll. And he said something very interesting at one point. He said, he strived to attain the holy grail of rock and roll. The holy grail is this cup that Jesus was supposed to have held, and that it contains the nectar of immortality. And this man says he went all the way to the top, and he achieved, he got the Holy Grail, and then he discovered it was just another empty cup. It was just another empty cup. And so all of these machinations that people go through, that, like what is being described here, where fathers selling their own sons to be sacrificed for some material purpose, actually, and people betraying other people and going behind their backs and cheating them in so many ways. This is what goes on in the material world under the illusion that there's something to be gained from all of this. But there's nothing to be gained in the material world. There's nothing to be achieved here. You strive so hard, but you end up with nothing. You strive so hard and you end up with nothing. This is material life. And there must come a time where you seriously start to question why. Why is it like this? Why does this go on? And then the basic questions, of course, arise. Why? Why am I here in the first place? Why do I have to go through these things? And is there some way of getting out of going through these things over and over again? Because you don't know where you're going to end up. You just don't know what your destination is in the material world. There's another example in Krishna book of the story of King Riga, where he was, like Krishna says, you should never give up austerity, charity, or sacrifice. So King Riga was very charitable. And he gave hundreds of thousands of cows in charity to Brahmins. And unbeknown to him, one of the cows that he gave to one Brahmin strayed back into his herd, and he gave it to another Brahmin. And that led to a whole altercation that led to him being cursed. And ending up a lizard in a well. Ending up a lizard in the well. And then we see, actually, when Krishna liberated him, he still really hadn't learned his lesson. He didn't just, once Krishna stood on the body of that lizard and out came Riga, and Riga was very grateful for being, Hare Krishna, being liberated from that body. He didn't then fully surrender to the Lord and become an unalloyed devotee. How's that? Yes? So, indicative in all of this, and we learn this as we become engaged in devotional service, that actually underpinning all of this is the desire to enjoy in the material world. And it runs very, very deep in our hearts. There's one, and it's not unnatural to want to enjoy. There's one in the book Science of Self-Realization. There's one article there of a journalist interviewing Srila Prabhupada, and at one point he asks him point blank, "What is the purpose of life?" And Prabhupada said, the purpose of life is to enjoy. But we have lost the understanding of what is the standard of enjoyment. That has become covered in us. But Krishna is Anandamaya Vyasat. He only enjoys. And we being part and parcel of Krishna, it's natural. We want to enjoy too, always. But in the material world, this becomes perverted. This under the influence of false ego and then the concomitant three modes of material nature, we become very, very foolish, very, very callous and hard-hearted, and addicted to sense gratification. And practically speaking, will do anything for sense gratification. Anything. As we associate with the three modes of material nature, our only desire is to enjoy, but nothing remains satisfactory in the process of sense gratification. So therefore, things like we see in so many cultures, after a certain time of getting to a level of material opulence and pleasure, there is no satisfaction. So things start to become, as they say, decadent. And people start to look for pleasure in more and more degraded activities. And they are prepared to gradually, practically speaking, do anything. Go anywhere, do anything. There's a famous play from ancient Rome called the Satyricon about this kind of thing. And in that play, it's about the decadent life of the aristocracy. And in that play, they have a play. You see the aristocracy having a gathering, and they have a play. And in that play, there's a man who is convicted of a crime, and he has to be punished. And the punishment for his crime is to have his hand cut off. So what these people did was get a beggar from the streets and bring him in as that convicted person. And in the play, with them as the audience, they literally cut his hand off. And everybody's watching it happen. This is the kind of thing that happens through our association with the three modes of material nature. And under the influence of the three modes of material nature, we therefore become entangled in this repetition of birth and death through 8,400,000 species of life. And it's endless. The situation just goes on and on and on. So until and unless we come in contact with the lotus feet of a pure devotee of the Lord, and we attain that knowledge by which the ignorance which covers our true knowledge is destroyed. As my wife was just saying here this morning, how powerful that line is from our Guru Puja Soul. By him, ignorance is destroyed. While one is functioning purely under the influence of the three modes of material nature, one is in ignorance, and that ignorance is never destroyed by any amount of mundane knowledge. It is only compounded more and more and more. We have to hear the truth from an enlightened soul. Then the doorway to getting out of this entanglement in the material world is open to us. How long do you go to with class? Here. 8:50? 23 minutes. There's not a lot to say about this verse. I think I'll open this up to any questions. Does anyone have any questions? Does anyone have any questions? Hmm?
Hare Krishna.
Hare
Yes, thank you very much, Prabhuji, for a wonderful class. This question, regarding this sacrifice of animal, and especially sacrificing the man is in place of animal. So, nowadays, people, although we are not finding the human sacrifice, but in the name of for the getting material benefits, people are going through this animal sacrificing, especially. So how is can be justified, or how we can stop them by convincing, okay, although it is given in the scriptures, but it's not in the Kali Yuga, because sometimes there's a certain thing that is recommended, but certain thing that is prohibited. So how we can convince the people that better not to go for these sacrifices, because in the name, it is as it is given in the Bhagavatam itself. So now people may find the way or excuse to go through all these things.
Can somebody repeat that, because I'm not used to the accent? Yes. Huh? Well, this was the situation when Lord Buddha was here. Lord Buddha appeared to deal with this kind of very situation. That, but of course, in the Kali Yuga, as things go by, it's very, very difficult. It's very, 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 very difficult to convince people to give up sinful activity. So ultimately, the only thing we have is to try to give people a higher taste. And if people don't want to take the higher taste, we can't waste our time with them. Prabhupada used to describe how in preaching, we have to be like the medics in a war. There's a battle going on, and wounded soldiers are brought in to the field hospital, and then the doctors, they have to decide quite ruthlessly, actually, which soldiers can be patched up enough to get back into the battle, and which soldiers are not going to make it. And then just give them, the ones that are not going to make it, they give them some palliative care and let them die. So if you're in a situation where people are just not listening to you and don't shift in any way as a result of your preaching, then you move on. You move on. The situation is in the world is actually too urgent for you to just be banging your head on the wall and getting nowhere. Yes, sir.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
You were mentioning in the class that people should find, after so much endeavor to enjoy, they come to a stage where they start questioning. Why is this happening? Why am I not able to get that pleasure which I wanted? Which is why I've endeavored so much. So my question is, how can we make people more curious, or is there a way to help people become more curious before they get to that stage? And if so, how?
Well, a couple of things. Actually, one time in a darshan in Vrindavan, Srila Prabhupada said that there are living entities who never leave the material world. On the other hand, there's a very nice purport in the first canto of the Srimad Bhagavatam, in the 5th chapter, which is Narad's instructions to Vyasa on the Srimad Bhagavatam. And I think I'll read that to you, which is it's very instructive in this regard, in terms of preaching, because we're always faced with time, place, and circumstance. So in verse number 16, Narad says to Vyasa, the Supreme Lord is unlimited. Only a very expert personality retired from the activities of material happiness deserves to understand this knowledge of spiritual values. Therefore, those who are not so well situated, and that's who you're talking about, those who are not so well situated due to material attachment, should be shown the ways of transcendental realization by your goodness through descriptions of the transcendental activities of the Lord. There's two paragraphs to the purport. The second paragraph is very pertinent to your question. Srimad Bhagavatam is the topmost theological science, and therefore it can react on the laymen as medicinal doses. Because it contains the transcendental activities of the Lord, there is no difference between the Lord and the literature. The literature is the factual literary incarnation of the Lord. So the laymen can hear the narration of the activities of the Lord. Thereby, they are able to associate with the Lord and thus gradually become purified from material diseases. The expert devotees also can discover novel ways and means to convert the non-devotees in terms of a particular time and circumstance. Devotional service is dynamic activity, and the expert devotees can find out competent means to inject it into the dull brains of the materialistic population. Such transcendental activities of the devotees for the service of the Lord can bring a new order of life to the foolish society of materialistic men. Lord Sri Krishna Chaitanya Mahaprabhu and his subsequent followers exhibited expert dexterity in this connection. By following the same method, one can bring the materialistic men of this age of quarrel into order for peaceful life and transcendental realization. So I was saying to you actually just before the class about your situation. And I said Srila Prabhupada's modus operandi is the best plan is what works. So we should not be bound by any rigid way of presenting. the philosophy to different audiences. And so be prepared to experiment with different ideas and different approaches to different people under different circumstances, and then assess what happens. It's dynamic activity. It's adventurous activity to go and preach. And we see in the Lilamrita how Prabhupada did things that nobody had ever done before. And as a result, he got people engaged in devotional activities. He spent the first 12 months very closely observing what was going on around him. And then he made adjustments in the presentation of Krishna consciousness to somehow or another attract the minds of the people that he was meeting. And that means, it means two things. It means don't be afraid of making mistakes, or don't be afraid of not getting a result, on the one hand. And on the other hand, don't get stuck in a rut of doing what we always do, because that's what we do. If it's not working, you change your tack. And then the final thing about that is there's no substitute for experience. You have to be in the field, and you have to be depending on the Lord to give you the intelligence that you need to deal with any given situation. Then with experience, things become like second nature. You just seem to know what to do, because by practicing dependence on Krishna in all activities, then as Krishna says, Tesham satata yuktanam bhajatam pritipurvakam dadami buddhi yogam tam yena mamupayantate. I give the intelligence by which you can come to me. That also means I give the intelligence by which you can bring people to me. So in all activities, we have to practice dependence on Krishna to give us the intelligence that we need. And if at first you don't succeed, you try again. By the time Srila Prabhupada got on the boat to go to America, it was 43 years after he had met Srila Bhaktisiddhanta. And on that first night he met Srila Bhaktisiddhanta, he got the instruction to preach in the English language. And then for 43 years, he tried so many different things. And by the time he got on that boat to go to America, he was a failure. Everything he had tried to do, well, he wasn't a failure. Everything he had tried to do had failed. But he didn't give up. And that's a very important lesson for us all. We might not get immediate success in our preaching activities, or we might not get a big result in our preaching activities. But we should never give up. We should never give up. There are so many stories, even in the lives of Sankirtan devotees, especially book distributors, who go out and they struggle all day long and can't even stop people. And they become very despondent and discouraged. And then right at the end of the day, they just, even practically half-heartedly, just show someone a book, and that person says, "Oh, I've been looking for this book. You Bhagavad Gita, I've been looking for this book for months." And then they give a huge donation. They give a huge donation. Actually, there's one story, our Srila Swami, unfortunately, has left us. He was in Mumbai in those days, right from the beginning of the project there. And he was a very expert preacher, and he used to collect a lot, make a lot of life members. And one time, he told me he went for 3 months, every day, all day long, and he didn't make one life member. And he was becoming despondent about it. And it just so happened that Srila Prabhupada visited Bombay at that time. And Sridhar Swami, then Brahmachari, he went to him and poured his heart out about how he was having such a difficult time. And Srila Prabhupada said, just keep going. Don't give up. Just keep going. He said, one day when this temple is open, people will be lining up to become life members. And I remember the first time I went to Bombay after the opening of the temple, it was some years after the opening of the temple. I hadn't been there since it had been completed. I'd only actually ever visited Bombay in the days when there was just a little tin shed temple and the big temple was being built all around it. Actually, the situation was such that this little tin shed temple was built at a certain angle before the ground plan of the big temple was laid out, and it turned out that there was a whole section of the temple, the plinth of the temple, that couldn't be completed until the deities had been moved into the temple and that building was torn down. Then the temple was actually completed. So that's when I visited there. And then some years later, I went on a visit, and it was fully established and functioning. And I walked in the front gate. Well, I didn't even get in the front gate. There was a line of people coming out the gate. And I thought, what is all this for? And then I walked in, and I saw there was a table just outside the doors of the entrance to the temple. And there was a devotee there, and people were just lining up and putting down their membership forms. All these people lined up out the gate were just becoming life members. So you may feel, I don't have any ideas. I don't have any. I don't know. I don't have anything original to do, and what I'm doing doesn't seem to be working. Don't give up. Just keep praying to the Lord for inspiration and direction, and talk about it with other devotees, and somebody will come up with an idea. And don't be envious of other people's ideas. Be prepared to work cooperatively. And try things. And if they don't work, we'll try something else. But don't give up. Just imagine if Srila Prabhupada had given up. He didn't give up. And he said in that first year in New York, I became very depressed. And I used to go to the Scindia steamship office to see when's the next boat. And then he'd think, well, I'll stay till then and then we'll see. And he got through that first year basically like that. And then finally something started to happen. That's all I've got. Yes? Does anyone else have any questions? We're finished now. Yes? Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Hare Krishna.